Hey HTDA, and today I have another demo for you, and this time it's Endless Legend 2. Now, this demo is available to anyone right now, so if you are at all interested in 4X games like Civilization or, Endless Legend 1, then I highly recommend you just go to Steam, download the demo, and then have this playing on the background while you're trying it out for yourself. Because what I want to do in this demo is not just play the game, but actually kind of show you what this game is about and help you understand what's going on, because these games can be quite intimidating if you've never played them before. Which is kind of a shame, because this game is really good and I've been enjoying the demo extremely much. Now, I'm not gonna say that I'm a master of this game just yet, but I do think I've got a pretty decent grasp. Now, there is 3 factions in the game currently. There's the Kin of Sheridan, which I'm going to be playing as, because I think these kind of showcase the game the best if you're just starting out. There's the aspects as well that you can play. These are more the diplomatic types. And then we have the necrophages, which are kind of like the bad guys, so to speak. Now, there's going to be, I think, 5 or 6 factions on launch, but as you just saw on the previous screen, you also will have the option to make your custom factions as well, so that gives the game a very high replayability. At the beginning of the game, you'll find yourself in a very familiar position, because we're going to have to find a place for our capital. Now, unlike some of these other games like Civilization, where you kind of want to set your capital down as fast as you can, in this game it's worth kind of exploring around. And if you do that, you do get a prepared settlement bonus for the equivalent amount of turns that you spent exploring first. That is going to kind of give your city a boost. You don't want to keep exploring forever, but you can take a couple of turns to look around and find a better place than you might have found initially. Now, in order to do that, we have some units over here, and we'll look at those units. They look kind of awesome on the map, honestly. It looks even better if I turn off the stuff that you see. Now, you can see the resources that you get from all the different tiles on the map. So this is like production. We have some food over here. I think that's the only things we have in view for the moment. There might also be things like dust. This is kind of like the gold equivalent, or influence, which you can use to do all kinds of diplomatic stuff. We'll worry about that later. There's a lot of stuff on the screen, but if you take things step by step, then it's really not that overwhelming. There's a couple of things on the map. If you see these glowing things on the map, you can kind of hover over. And a very nice thing about this game is that you can very easily check out what everything means. So if you take a look on the left, you can see that proficients are a curiosity that will allow you to bring an army here, and you get something in return for that. There's also a forest here that has a total output of 2 food and 1 industry. And then why do you get all of those bonuses? Well, it's because it's near water, that gives it some food, and the tile itself, which is a forest, gives you 1 of each, and you need 2 movement to move through this. It's a lot of information, but honestly the most important thing is that this tile has some decent turnouts and that there are some provisions on here. So if we send a unit to this, we can actually loot this. And there we go, we discovered exactly nothing, so that's a little bit of a bummer. But it is what it is. But you can see I have some different tiles over here. I have a tile with a little bit of everything. And we're just looking for the best possible location to put down our first city. Now, if you see some underlined things on a tile that you're kind of like, okay, but what does that mean? You can press shift. This will lock this thing here. And then you can click on the next thing. And if you keep holding shift, you can just keep going through all these explanations one by one. And go as deep as you want. Do you want to go all the way down initially, because this looks extremely overwhelming? The answer is no, but you can if you want to. So you don't have to go through an entire encyclopedia to kind of figure out what's going on. Okay, so we move this first unit. This is now out of movement. We have our secondary unit over here, and this one has a hero in it. This is Yui. And this is an archer unit, and he has some additional units with him. The legionary you can see over here. This is an infantry unit, and we can split those off, or we can combine them. You can see these are 2 empty spots, so we could actually bring our scouts over here into our main army. What we can also do is just split them off and have these guys do some exploring by themselves, just to speed things up. And you can see here, for example, there's a tile here that produces 10 things by itself, which is a lot more than all the other tiles. Now, this resource in particular is stability, which is not necessarily the most important thing. It's going to be important later on in the game, but for now that is not really what I'm looking for. So I am going to go and scout up here. There was another goody hut over there. We found an abandoned site, and we had some dust in there, some additional gold. And now we're out of movement, and you can see we have not founded our city yet, and that's okay, we'll get a boost once we end our turn. Now, I do want to show you how the map works. So if we zoom out a little bit, you can see there's kind of like these regions on the map. And every region by itself, if you put a city in there or an expansion to a city, you will capture the entire zone in one go. So unlike, again, Civilization, where you have these borders that move over time, in this game you just capture an entire zone. Which also means that it is very important to check out what is actually in a zone before you commit to it, because if the nice stuff that you want is actually on the other side of this border, you're not going to be able to get that if you decided to found your city elsewhere. Okay, another turn. Let's do some exploring. Let's bring our scouts up here to here. There's another goody hut over here, so let's take that. Some influence and some movement speed, nothing too special. There's another goody hut over here, so let's move in that direction. This isn't the worst location, but all of this doesn't look too exciting, although look at this. Oh, I thought this was 777. It's 111. Okay, not that exciting then. Okay. This location looks fairly interesting, but there's not really any production around there, so that's a bit of a shame. Nothing too interesting here either, so let's start doing some more scouting. And okay. There we go. So we have some minor factions over here. These villages we can convert to our site in several different ways. We'll get to that in a moment. But most importantly, once these are in our territory and we get them on our site, we will get a bonus from that. And in this case, it's going to be 5 approval per pacified village on all of our cities. There's 2 cities already, or 2 towns already. So that would be 10 approval for every one of our cities, which could be pretty decent. It's not the most exciting bonus, I have to say, but you know, we'll have to work with it. So I definitely want to have a couple of these in my initial starting zone. What I also want is a pretty good starting location, and this looks to be a pretty decent one because this tile itself already has 4 production and 4 dust. And if you compare that to this location, for example, where the game is also suggesting we could place our city, that was actually very close to where we started. It's a decent location with 4 food and 10 industry, but this one has 6 food, 11 production and 4 dust, which is obviously a lot better than this particular location over here. So if we found our city here, we'll immediately connect all the surrounding tiles to our city, so we get the bonus from all of that. And then if we check, for example, our production, we're going to get 15 from our city, some from our population. I'll get to that in a moment. But look at this, we get a plus 11 bonus for 1 turn because we have that prepared settlement, because we didn't settle on the first turn. So this is a way of catching up. Now, what do I want to build in my city? We can build some districts, and you can see there's different districts that we can pick from. I can't build here because this is an anomaly. It's already really good by itself, but that does mean we can't build anything there. What I want to do is I think we are going to build a keep here. Now a keep is going to give us some additional stability, and stability doesn't really do much for your city other than keeping everyone at ease. And if you get enough stability, you will actually get some production bonuses as well. So it's not the most direct way to boost your city. But why do I want to build a keep for this faction? Well, our faction actually benefits highly from getting fortification. So let me place down this thing over here. You can actually tell how much you're going to gain from putting a building in a specific location. If I click on this thing, for example, and I would want to build a works here, you can see I get a +3 to my production, which is really, really nice. You can also see why we get that. So if you look at this, we get 2 industry by itself just from building this building, and because this tile already has some production on it, we get +1 production on top of that as well. If I would build it, for example, over here, you would see I only get 2 industry because I don't get that additional +1 from there already being industry on this tile. So you do have to think about what you place where. Now in general, getting some production up and running early is always good, but I'm actually going to do that in a little bit of a different way. I'm going to build a keep which doesn't have any production by itself, but will give me that stability It'll take 3 turns to build that. But I am going to research, I think it was this one, yeah. A technology that is going to give me +2 industry on military districts. Also give me some additional defense of my units, so that's never a bad thing. And that will just make our army stronger, but also allow us to build up fortifications while also giving us industry. So you can see my keep is now going to give me not just everything I just showed you, but also, once this completes, +2 industry, which is almost the same as that works that was just going to give us the production. So this is what we're going to go for first. Now in this game, you have different technologies. We are going to research a total of 8 of them. We already start out with 2 because we are the faction that we are. We get stonework, which allows us to actually build that keep I just showed you, as well as the workshop, which allows us to build that workshop that I just showed you. So if you're playing a different faction, you might not actually be able to build these buildings at the beginning of the game. Once we have 8 of these technologies, and as you can see, there's actually more than 8 on here, there's 10 of them over here, we can move on to the second stage, the second level of technology, you could say. And this kind of goes on and on and on. So there's a lot more to this technology tree than you might think initially. But for now, let's focus on the basics. Now, once you move on to the next tier, you can actually still research things from the initial tier. But of course, these ones tend to be better. Every time you research a technology, the next one is going to be more expensive. So make sure you pick the ones you want early on. Now, in case you're wondering, in general, the technology tree is really nicely distributed. So you have like the army things over here. You have the diplomacy, food, and influence things over here. Then you have the more industry and dust-related, gold-related stuff over here. And then in the bottom, you have the technology-related stuff. So you kind of know exactly where to find stuff. These little thumbs up is the game kind of recommending what to pick next. It's a decent guide, but it really depends on what you're actually trying to do, so don't just blindly pick these things. But we'll get to that once we do some more researching. Okay, so why are we building that keep again? Well, because that is going to give us fortification, and that will allow us to use our special abilities for our faction over here. So if I go to the faction overview, there's a lot of information about everything we can do here. There's 2 things right now that I want to have you focus on. So first of all, the strength of our seal. If we get more fortification, and there's different thresholds as you can see, we'll get special abilities that we can use to our advantage. This is just playing into the strength of our faction. Because we are building a keep, as soon as we complete that, we'll get the first one available, because we'll go from 500 to 600, and that means we get the first ability unlocked. I'll get to that ability later on, but that is why we're doing it. The second thing that is important is here that right now we have a city cap of 3. We have 1 city completed and we can build 2 more. And if we build any more than that, our empire approval is going to take a dip. Actually, there's one more thing I want to point out, because if you have more population of your specific faction, and in this case the kin of Sheridan, then once we reach certain thresholds, if once we reach, for example, 5 population, we will get access to the first unlock, and that is just permanent. So once we get to 15, we get another unlock, and at 30, we get yet another unlock. And that will just, again, play to our strength. So for example, if we have 5 people from this specific faction, we will be able to unlock the military press, which allows us to make our military districts even stronger. +8 influence on each of them is super strong. So that means that's why we're leaning into that. So you really need to take a look at your faction, see what your strengths are, and then play into them as much as you can. Okay, let's do some more exploring. You wanted to go over here. I almost forgot about that. Some more dust and influence. Nothing really special about that. Let's pick this one up as well. Science. That is really nice. That will speed up the science that we're working on. Let's keep exploring a little bit. Now, it is risky to split up all your units like I'm doing now, but I'm doing that because I want to make sure I get a good look at my surroundings before I continue. Now, these minor factions over here, you can turn them to your side in, I think, 3 different ways. You can attack them. Assuming you destroy them, you get some nice experience out of that, so it's not the worst way to go. But on top of that, you might get some loot, etc. So all of that is one way of doing that. They might attack you back though, so this is not going to be entirely trivial. However, you can also just go up to them and talk to them, and you will get a quest. Let's do that right now. Hard times. Nice stretch of ground. What just happened? I'm not sure what happened. Might be a bug in the demo. But what we need to do in order to complete this quest is remove forest 3 times with one of our armies. So for example, if we remove these 3 forests over here, that is going to be enough to get these people on our side. And, well, I guess that's what we're doing now. So let's do that over here. We have plenty of forests on this side, so I'm not too worried about that. And we're just going to be removing those forests, and that will turn both of these towns to our side straight away. In the meanwhile, we now have completed our first technology because we just unlocked that, we found that goody hut with all that science in there. What's the next thing we want to grab? We could either get a forum up and running for some additional influence, which could be really nice, honestly. We don't really need the approval. Going for science is never a bad idea, so I think I'm gonna queue that one up next. And then we'll take it from there. Now, what I'm going to build in this thing, we are still building the keep. But as you can see right now in the overview, we are also going to get that 2 industrial military districts. So working like intended. Okay, so let's do some more exploring. There's a lot of open land here. Let's grab this goody hood over here. Let's have you move all the way up here. And look, there's another minor faction here. This faction would give us some additional strategic resources if we would get them into our country. There's just one of them so far, so I'm not sure I'm going to focus on that. But, you know. Oh, look, we will get another story event. Now, again, I'm just going to skip through these, but there's basically a story for every faction and that you kind of want to lean into because that is a way of winning the game. There are different objectives that you'll get to search locations, to gather items, to defeat certain enemies, etc, etc. Those will give you rewards, so they're always worth doing, but they will also progress a story. You can track your quests over here in the quest journal, so there's different quests that you have. So you can see this is the quest I got from the minor faction, this is the faction quest that we have. But if we go to the victory screen over here, then for now there's just a score going up. You can see we are currently in 2nd place, but nothing really special happening over here. But as soon as we get to meet certain characters, we will get some other tabs in here that will show us what we're working on, what type of stories that we're working on, and those can actually unlock win conditions by themselves. Speaking of meeting new people, we just met the first faction in the game, and I'm not sure where we met them actually. Oh, they are over here. They have a lot stronger army than I currently have because I split up all of mine, so hopefully that won't come back to bite me. So I'm actually going to retreat over here because we don't need to necessarily venture out all over the place and get ourselves killed. I am going to do a little bit more exploring over here. Oh look, there's another anomaly over here with a lot of dust. I haven't really found any special resources yet. I think that is by design. But you know, let's kind of double back and make sure we can defend ourselves if we need to, and then we'll take it from there. Let's empty turn once more. I just cleared out a forest over here, so that is nice. You can actually see the factions are moving out as well, the minor factions. If you're not careful, they will just destroy you. You don't have to wait on the AI to do that. The minor factions will do it for them. So yeah, you do need to make sure you can defend your own countries. And look at that, there's a lot more of these dudes. These are the green science, 10% food per pacified village on cities. That's quite a lot, especially considering there's 2 of them. So we might want to consider actually getting these people in our kingdom rather than these people if we don't care about the approval as much, and instead go and be all about the food. But then we would need to take this zone, so that's something to keep in mind. Meanwhile, I'm just gonna go and clear out some more forests over here. There we go. 1 down, 2 to go. Meanwhile, back in our city, our keep is now done, and look at all those juicy benefits we get from that. So I am actually going to build another keep over here. That is going to allow me to get some more production. You can never have too much production. That will just make everything else easier. And there we go. Now, after that, I probably should build a unit, maybe 2. So we could add in another legionnaire to the mix, just so we can fill up our army a little bit better. Let me double check. So we have 3 spaces available. We only have 2 additional units, so we do have room for a third one. And there we go. I recombined my initial 2 units with my hero, and now we have a little bit of a more stronger defensive line over here that should be able to handle these random units walking around in case they decide to attack us. Would you look at that? There's actually a third village over here that is on the other side of the river. So that is really interesting because now we are converting 3 of them to our side once this is done. And that's quite a few to unlock with a single quest. Okay, well the AI is closing their borders to us. I'm not sure we care about that too much. But it also seems that the AI is right next door, so that is a little bit inconvenient because I wanted to take this zone next. So we're going to be on the edge of war from the get-go, it seems like. But yeah, sometimes the game is like that. But anyway, we discovered the scientific charter, so we can do some sciencey stuff now. And now I really wonder where to go next. I do think I want to invest a little bit more on food, which would allow me to get the farm up and running, which is of course going to give some additional farming production. And you can see that it's now going to take 13 turns for the next technology, which is kind of a slow start, honestly. But it is what it is. And then after that, I think we'll get the forum, maybe. Let's see, what are the alternatives? We can get some additional health of our units and damage on our units. It could be really good if we're actually trying to go and attack the AI at some point. Not sure if this is the optimal the optimal way to move forward, but I am going to go in this direction because I want to showcase you some battles as well. Okay, we cut down some trees and now they are super happy with us. Not quite what we expected, but plenty fascinating. From now on you can count on us to look around for you whenever the Hoi and Ladran set ourselves down. Look! We are going to get vision around the cities. We are going to pacify all the Hoi and Ladran villages in the territory, and that concludes that quest. So now you can see all these 3 of the villages are now pacified, which is awesome, and that is going to give us some additional yields. But most importantly, it's also going to give us some population. Look, we got one of them in our city now. I am going to focus this guy on some more production so we can finish this up as quickly as we can, and then after that we probably want to focus a little bit on the food over here. So you can see we have 3 different sections where we can put our villagers in. The kin of Sheridan are extra good when we put them in the artisan slot because they get 2 additional industry. So artisans by themselves already get industry and dust. But if we put our own faction in there, we get an additional 2 industry. So that's really nice. The Hoi and Ladran apparently give us influence on cities containing a pacified village, which our city has. So that is quite nice. So you can see we're actually getting that 2 influence now as well. It doesn't really matter where you put these other than these slots default settings. So I might as well just put these guys to work on our industry. However, once we get our next kin, we want to replace that guy over here, move them somewhere else, and then put our kin in here so we can make sure we get the maximum out of that industry bonus. Now, if you want to kind of let the game optimize this for you, you can just click here what you want to focus on. So let's say I want to focus on industry, it will do exactly this. But if I tell it to focus on food, for example, it will just move them to the food. Now, obviously this sounds like a little bit obvious what it's doing now, but if you have multiple different types of people in your cities, if you have more than 2 in your cities, this will automatically kind of distribute them in an optimal way, so you don't have to min-max all of that yourself. It's also worth noting that not all minor factions are the same. So for example, these ones over here have this kind of like marker over here. That means that they're hostile. So these guys will actually actively attack us. So I'm inclined to just move my army out here and try to take them out before they can do that. Now, just because these guys are hostile doesn't mean I have to fight them. I can just still talk to them and get a quest, or I can just spend my money and bribe them, which I'm gonna do now just to speed things up, and because I do want to show you the different things you can do in this game. Bribing them would just instantly turn them friendly, and they would have rather had a fight. I can understand that, but now they are completely friendly to me and they won't attack me anymore. Now, we still have these roaming units on the map, so what we can do, we can actually fight them. And look at that, that will bring us to a combat screen. Now we can deploy our units in whatever way we want. We can move them around in these colored things, and you can see over here, this is where the enemy will spawn themselves. I am going to move up my archer unit a little bit, but other than that, I think this is a fairly decent position to be in. Alternatively, what I could do is just leave everyone here, but I could move towards them or let them come to me. Either way works. Now, once you've placed your units in the way that you prefer, you can either retreat and kind of just back out of the battle, which is kind of useless, of course. You can do a manual battle, but if you don't want to do everything by yourself, you can also just pick instant resolution. You can see exactly what is going to happen. So you can see all my units who take a considerable amount of damage, but we do take out the enemy if we do this. Using the instant resolution will speed things up quite a bit, but I am going to do the manual battle just to show you what you can do. Now, my units get a buff from standing next to each other at the beginning of the turn, so you can see this little blue bar is going to give them some protection. And I'm just going to chill here, I think. Let the enemy come to me, see if that works. Put everyone on defensive, and see if the enemy unit wants to charge into me. It seems that they do. But now I can move out and get the first hits in myself. Or I could just keep defending, which could be interesting, but yeah, no. Let's actually do some battle. There we go. Let's hit them. Let's hit them some more. Let's hit them some more over there. And now last but not least, my archers are going to be firing. Now these guys are standing in a forest, which is not ideal because I'm barely going to do any damage. However, I have a special ability that I can use once per combat. And that is just going to do a flat 48 damage, which could be quite useful to take off some of their health. Now I currently have the animations on fast, but if you want to speed things up a little bit, you can do this. Or not speed things up, I mean, and you can really tell what's going on. Now, everyone is hiding in the forest, which is a little bit inconvenient, honestly. So what I could do is I could just back up myself. There we go. Something like this. And then you guys go here. Now, I do take an attack of opportunity when I do that, and you can see that they're now hitting me instead. So there's a definite downside of doing this, repositioning while you're next to enemy units. But on the bright side, by doing this, I actually gain a better position compared to where they were before. There we go. Now, I'm not saying this is the optimal strategy, I just want to show you you have different options on what you can do. Now, they just moved out of the forest, so that will make them a lot easier to hit. They are kind of slamming their friend over there, though. So let's hit them back. Let's shoot them a little bit. And let's flank them with my cavalry units as well. And I think we have the first unit going down almost. There we go. Now, a combat is going to take no more than 8 rounds, so you can't just kite them around the battlefield. The game is designed against that, for good reason, I would say. There we go. That is one down. And that is going to do a lot more damage. Now we can speed things up a little bit. But you really have to take into consideration what your units do. So for example, if we take our cavalry over here, you can see its speed, you can see its damage, but there's also skill. So cavalry is specifically designed to attack infantry. So if we look at this guy, this is a ranger, so it's actually... does this count as infantry? I am actually not entirely sure. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I do think that counts as infantry. This one is infantry. So what one? This one is a juggernaut. Okay, so this is actually not an infantry. This is also an anti-infantry unit. But yeah, every single unit has different things it does. Some of them are useful outside of combat. For example, a juggernaut is again good against infantry. And so every unit has kind of like its own counter and own abilities that you might want to consider. Now, did I do better than the instant resolve? I think I did, but probably not by much. The good news is that once you win a combat, you also get some spoils. In this case, we just get some dust, but you might also get, for example, items out of that you can use to equip your hero. Okay, so let's move our hero back to our time to kind of like repair itself a little bit and recover in that way. And then in the meanwhile, let's see if we look on the map, can we actually see the mosaic halls already? They are all the way down here. So in order to complete our faction quest, we're actually going to have to venture out quite a bit, which is a little bit inconvenient, but you know, we'll have to deal with that. In the meanwhile, we gained another population. So let's go to our town. Let's go to our population. And look at that. Now, if we refocus a little bit on industry, you kind of like have to click between them. But you can see the kin are now being assigned to the artisan slots. So we are getting some additional industry out of that. And we are also getting some additional science and influence out of this for having a scribe. And that is going to make our life a lot easier. We have 150 influence now. So this is when we want to go to the, I think it's the diplomacy screen. I have to kind of click around a little bit to figure out where we go. There we go. This is the one I was looking for. This is the overview for the protectorate. So we pacified these villages, but they're not actually part of our kingdom right now. However, we have a slot available where we can hook these guys in, and if we assimilate them, we will actually get that bonus. So this is going to give us a total of 15 approval in total on all of our cities, just by getting these people in. And now if we check our city, we are now at a happy state, which is going to give us some additional production bonuses as well. If I'm not mistaken, there we go. We have an additional +5 production, for example, because everyone is happy. We are also running out of slots, so we are definitely going to have to build some improvements to our city so we can slot all our people. But yeah, adding all those villages to our city strengthened it by a massive amount, as you can see right here. Anyway, for the moment, right now I have an abysmal amount of science coming in, so I want to build another laboratory. I'm gonna build that, I think, right here, because it does benefit from having an adjacent anomaly, although I could also build it here and get the same result. So yeah, maybe this is a better location. We'll save this for a farm or something. However, in general, you do want your districts to be next to each other in order to level them up, because if you have 4 of them adjacent to each other, they are upgraded by 1 level. For the moment, however, I don't think it's super important, so I'm just going to build my laboratory there. Let's see, we also have our legion ready. So we can kind of merge that into our existing army, I think. Why is this not working? There's not enough free slots. Oh, that's because we actually got that Juggernaut unit in there already. Well, then we just have a bonus unit to work with for the moment. That might be an opportunity to send out my guy to start exploring. What's over here? We have an event. Lumbering up. Ah, visitors. And strong ones at that. Not a moment too soon. If you could just support that beam. Now, again, these are kind of like random events, as far as I know, that give you additional quests. I'm going to skip through it, but they will give you a choice. We can either get a 30 industry buff on... Ooh, that's a lot on our city. But that will make sure our legion cannot move for a turn. It's not the worst problem in the world. We can get some rare materials, but again, make our legion slower for 10 turns. Or we can just not get any negatives, but we still get some resources. Now, I am actually going to go for that production boost, because that is super useful. And there we go. So these are just the random events that can trigger every now and then. In the meanwhile, we are gonna go down here. And our army is currently immobilized. We already knew that, but that's okay. It's actually interesting because we moved through that before we clicked on it. So it actually just was immobilized at the end of its turn. So that's not the worst thing in the world to happen. We'll keep these guys at home. So let's just put them on a defensive position, I think, for the moment. Because I don't want them venturing out by themselves and getting themselves killed, obviously. And then we can once again end our turn. So thanks to that boost we just got, we can now start upgrading our city a little bit quicker. Now we could just keep building districts, but there's also improvements. These are one-of-a-kind things that you do not need to build in a district, and that will just give you very nice buffs, generally speaking. Now we can, for example, build the Sanctity of Nature. We can only build that once per empire, so building it in our capital makes sense. And that's just going to give us a massive boost to pretty much everything we're doing. And it's only going to take us 2 turns thanks to that boost we're getting, so that sounds very useful. We could also now assign some more population, but we actually need our city to grow, so we're really low on food in our city right now, actually. So that will probably be the next thing we focus on. I've done some exploring in the meanwhile, and look, all the way over here we found the mosaic hall. So that's what we're going to need for our quest line. And again, this is kind of out of the way. Sometimes you get lucky and it's a little bit closer. It is what it is, but we'll just have to deal with that. Now, we just completed our upgrade. So as you can see, we're now back in the positives for food, but not really in a convincing way. We do get a lot more science now, so that is very nice. Let's build some more districts, and specifically I want to build a farm. Now this is going to give us 2 food, plus 1 food if it is already producing food, which it is, and then plus 1 food for any adjacent lakes, etc. Now we could actually build a very nice farm over here. Unfortunately, we would still have to buy that first. As you can see, I can buy this tile. I'm actually just going to do that, and then I am going to be building a food over here that's going to give me 6 food, so that is going to allow my city to grow again. Okay, now a couple of different things are happening. First of all, we just completed our quest, so we went to the mosaic halls, we got some more storyline. Again, I'll skip through that if you want to read it for yourself. But we are now going to need to destroy the Necro Horde, and we get some influence for doing that. Not entirely sure where that Necro Horde is. Apparently they're hiding here in the dark. But as you can see, there's a storm going on. It's raining. Long story short, this is the monsoon. This is kind of a recurring event that will happen every now and then. And this is going to trigger several things to progress the story forward. First things first though, let's take out that army, and just because I was talking about it earlier, as you can see this is a pretty weak fight. I could do it by myself, or I can just say do that instant resolution. Now in this case actually we would get quite a bit of damage out of that. Do I want to try and do it myself? Yeah, I'm actually going to do that off screen and see if I do any better. And there we go. I would say this is not perfect, but it's definitely a lot better than what the AI was going to do for me. Because it's the monsoon, we actually get to assign people to our council now. So we can select a couple of different people, and they will all have different bonuses. So for example, we can put our own hero on the council. He's going to give us 15 industry on our capital. We could get our engine stoker in there. That's going to give all of our cities 5 industry. We could get more approval on our city, or we could get some battle spoils. Now honestly, these are somewhat random as well, depending on what faction, for example, you convert. The 15 industry on our capital I think is a no-brainer. What else do I want to get? 40 approvals on capitals is quite a bit as well. Some additional production might be nice though, because I don't really need the approval, although 40 approval is so much, it might actually push me to the maximum level. Interesting. Let's actually try that. There we go. We could just reassign that. It does cost some dust, but it's not the end of the world. And now if we go to our main city, let's see, yeah, we are now at 100%. So we are going to get a pretty hefty bonus to everything we're doing in terms of percentage. So this might be worth it in the end. Not entirely sure. The additional production would have been nice as well. But the battle spoils is definitely not what I want to pick, because I'm not going to be doing that much battle. The enemy is now actually attacking us, and the interesting thing is if I now just do the instant resolution, they will just pretty much get obliterated. So every now and then it does make sense to do that. Now in the meanwhile, my hero actually leveled up, so we can go to the skill tree. And this is really interesting, honestly, because every hero has 3 different types of abilities. First of all, there's an ability that is associated with the faction that unit belongs to. So this is going to be the identical set of skills for every single hero of this faction. Then we have skills belonging to the class, so in this case an archer. So every archer in the game, regardless of their faction, is going to be having these abilities. And then in between over here, there's the hybrid skill tree. So this is going to combine the unique faction and class and give them abilities based on that. Now, on top of that, we could also just decide to increase our might, our endurance, our intuition, or our determination. which is going to increase the power of these skills. Initially, we can only pick from these base skills over here, but once we assign 2 points to that, we can pick from the more powerful skills and so on. So you kind of want to keep leveling your heroes, which is why, in general, it is a pretty good thing to do some fighting. What I think I want to do, because I have a mix of this range unit along with some melee units, I think in general these abilities are often the most interesting, but that might just be my inexperience talking. This ability is going to give me an additional amount of damage when I'm attacking a unit that is adjacent to 2 of my friendly units. So if I use my melee to kind of push forwards and then attack with my archer on the exact same unit on top of that, that is going to do an increasing amount of damage. You could also go for some other upgrades, for example, just give your hero some extra health and so on. But I think kind of turning this into a glass cannon might not be the worst decision ever. There we go. So now I've upgraded my hero to level 2. If we go to the hero overview screen, by the way, let me do that over here. You can assign some friends, companions. We can't actually pick anything here yet because we don't have other heroes yet. You can have nemesis. So if you, for example, have a couple of fights with an enemy hero, and at some point you can declare that you're nemesis. But most importantly, what you can do over here is deal with your equipment. Now, right now I don't have any spare equipment, but you can find that across the world and then upgrade your character through that as well. So there's kind of like a mini role-playing game inside of this game. So it's not just conquering the world, there's following quests, there's upgrading your characters. In the initial Endless, there was, I think, a little bit of an overload on that. But I think in this game it's a little bit more streamlined, and it's all the better for that. Okay, so since I now have so much things coming in, but I don't really have a lot of signs yet, I am going to build another laboratory over here. So that is going to help me boost my science again, because this is also next to this anomaly. And then we're going to be moving on from there. Now, let's see. I also have my hero over here, and during the monsoon, you get these nice pop-ups that you can use to kind of move around the map even more quickly than you normally can. So this is a nice way to kind of boost yourself around. Now what I want to do is... let's see, what I could do is move over here. I think, yeah, this might be a good location. Move over here and then found a camp. And I'm gonna do that maybe over here. The game is actually suggesting that I might want to go over here. That would give me more production than if I do it over here. And it would also give me more dust. So yeah, I'm actually gonna go with that suggestion over here. It's gonna take me an additional round, but that's okay. In the meanwhile, we need to do some more technology. We could build a bridge. That might not be the worst thing in the world, considering we are right next to a river. However, getting the forum up and running might be useful as well. Some more approval. Yeah, actually I think I'm gonna go for that first. And then probably for the currency afterwards, so we get some additional gold flowing as well. So what the nice thing is about settling a camp over here is that we can go to that camp over here and then attach it to a city or evolve it into its own city. By attaching it to a city, we can do that over here, you can see that. And attaching this to a city will actually convert the resources it's gathering over here to our city. So our city is now going to be producing way more than it did before. As you can see, it's now actually steadily growing thanks to all the food that we just added to it. And this is a way to really empower your city. So this city actually constitutes out of this entire region over here. I can build a total of 3 cities, but I can hook up additional zones to those cities and thereby expanding my influence across the world. Now, very important as well, you can also keep building additional things in these new territories. So I have my main city over here, but because I expanded here now, I can start building districts here as well. Now, this is the same building queue, so you can't just build in 2 places at the same time, but you do expand your territory quite substantially by attaching more districts to it. More territories to it, I should say. Now, you can only initially have 2 additional territories hooked up, so we have 2 in total now. We can add a 3rd to that, which I do want to do pretty soon, because as you can see, I'm producing quite a bit of influence now, and that will keep adding up over time. Now, I do have to say I'm getting a little bit unlucky because right now I'm just getting boxed in by my enemy, so we're going to have to do something about that. So rather than just founding new cities ourselves, we might just want to kind of knock our enemy off the map. However, before I do that, I am going to take this zone in addition to the ones I already have by placing another camp down there and maximizing the city I have, and then we're just going to have to build some units and take the fight to the enemy. In order to do that, we might as well utilize our special unit for our faction, which is the Chosen One. These guys are super strong, they hit very hard, have a lot of HP on top of that, but we can only build a limited amount of them. Right now I can build 2 of them, which I am going to do, and in order to be able to build more of them, we're going to have to research more technology. At the end of the monsoon, purely by accident, we actually also unlocked a new era, which is going to push our quests forward, which are going to allow us to get access to more technology. We're also going to get some more quests. Look, we just unlocked the special unit, but we already had that. I'm just gonna go click through these quests. You can look at those yourself if you're interested. But the main thing I wanted to focus on was the actual connecting of my second region over here to my city. There we go. So now we have this giant city over here, but in between all of these enemies. So yeah, that is not ideal. We have an enemy over here, which is a pretty large army, but it's not particularly strong. So let's go and attack them. They are going to run away from me, which of course makes sense because they are far weaker than I was. So that is probably the smart thing on their behalf to do. So if we now look at all the new territory that we got, there's some new zones over here. There is a underground citadel as well, and that is a special kind of dungeon that you can go into. It is pretty well defended, so you don't need to go in there with a small army. You do want to make sure you upgrade your army before you do that. But there's going to be items in there to upgrade your hero. There's going to be a substantial reward. You can actually choose to conquer this area along with that, so you don't have to spend the influence on doing that yourself. However, you might not necessarily want to do that. For example, the village over here will be okay, but there's 2 anomalies over here. One of them is a deposit actually, but there's an anomaly over here with 10 science that you might want to pick up instead. But yeah, all of these things are up for consideration if you want to progress in this game. Now, is this a lot of information in a very short time? Yes. Is it confusing initially? Yes. Is it really fun? Yeah, it is really fun because you get all of these quests. Every game is different. If you play initially on a lower difficulty, it is quite a nice, easy-going way to play the game. It is quite forgiving, I've found so far. I do have to say I got really unlucky completely being boxed in by the enemy like I am over here. Typically at this point I would have had my second city up and running as well. I can fairly easily do that now with all the influence I have coming in as well, but yeah. Every single playthrough is going to be different. If you want to have an easier time, just make sure that you have less opponents so you have more room to work with. Kind of get a hold of what every faction does and then slowly up the difficulty once you play. And that is, I think, the way forward. Now, keep in mind, this is just a demo. So if we go to the victory screen, I am 50 turns away from the end of the game. I'm about, I think, halfway through. What turn is it? 35. So yeah, it's a little less than halfway through. There's a lot more content to come after this, but you won't be able to completely conquer the entire world before the end of the demo. So this is just a gameplay demo, keep that in mind. 2 factions in there, 3 factions that you can fight against. A lot of quests are already there. There are some placeholders here and there in quests that I've noticed already. But you can get a feel for all the different minor factions of all the different technologies, about upgrading your units, recruiting new units. We've actually only had 1 unit so far, but you can recruit additional units as well. Long story short, there's a lot to explore in this game, and I'm really loving it. Now, is that a lot of information to take in? For sure, and I haven't even talked about special resources yet, although they aren't that complicated. You use these to upgrade your units at some point once you get new technologies. We haven't really talked about diplomacy yet, but again, that's really straightforward in the games like this. You can, for example, ask them to share resources, but you want to be friends with them first, and if you've already been attacking them like I have been, then they probably won't agree with that too quickly. But all in all, the main thing is that you want to kind of try and win the game. Now you can see this enemy that is right next to me actually is also the strongest enemy in the game. So once more, I got really unlucky there. But there are going to be different people that you can meet and different quests that you can unlock by doing so. This was mostly a quick overview of how this game works. I hope I made at least some sense, but it is quite a complicated game initially to kind of walk you through all the different nuances. It's the best just to go and play it yourself. So once again, the demo is out now. You can do everything I just showed you yourself as well, and that helps understanding it. And then come back to this and hopefully it will make a little bit more sense what I was doing. I might upload a couple more videos on this game as well, depending on whether or not people actually like to see this, so let me know in the comments if you do. If you're still here, you are awesome, and I definitely hope to catch you in the next one.